Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Circle Up and Get Real, where we talk about things that matter with people who matter. And today I don't have a guest. I have a conversation going on in my own head that I'd like to share, and a lot of things I've been pondering and wondering in my Wonder Ponder journal lately have kind of culminated today in what I'd like to explore. As always, if you're watching live, please put a comment here in the chat if you would like. And if you're watching later, you can do that too. I just won't be able to address them as they happen. So I've been thinking a lot over the past, oh my goodness, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, it feels like a long time, about what's going on underneath what I can see. And faith and trust would require us to believe that there's something more going on than we can see. Faith especially does that. In Think and Grow Rich, we talk about faith. It's one of the chapters. And it's a steadfast belief in something you can't yet see. And I have faith that there's something happening that is working toward my greater good. And I would say humanity's greater good, even if I can't see it, even if it doesn't look obvious to me. And so right now it feels a little like it could feel kind of like there is no plan. It could feel very chaotic right now. And the way I feel, by the way, I'm going to talk about myself today. I'm going to talk about the way I feel. I'm not speaking for anyone else today. I'm just speaking for myself and what I feel called to do in the world. So I probably have shared here before on this podcast about how I had this kind of awakening after this last election. And it was that I am not here to take a side. I am here to stand in the middle and stand for the middle, because there's something about humanity that has potential and has possibility when we come together, when the best of us comes together, let's put it that way. And I hesitate to say that because I also feel that there are things that are being done that are wrong, that go against my morals, that go against my values, that cause me to feel that my values are being stepped on. So it's really hard to be silent about things that you feel are stepping on your values. And I know that it's crucial that people talk about things. I know that it's crucial that we don't just hide our feelings and our beliefs and our values under a rock. And so we need to talk about things, but we're not conditioned to talk about things that are hard. Things like religion and politics, for two. We don't talk about these things in public, so we don't get practice in talking about these things in public. We're supposed to be polite. We're supposed to nod our heads and agree with things. Or if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. I know I've been trained that way. I can't remember where that came from. It's just something that has been kind of ingrained. And so, because we don't know how to speak about topics that are difficult, we don't do it very well. We end up being very hard and loud, and we might yell a lot. We might say things we don't mean. We might have an outcome that we don't intend because we don't have practice in talking about things. And I'm doing the best I know how to do to be inquisitive and curious. And going back to my current favorite book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, I'm doing my best to stay above the line, which is open, curious, and committed to learning. Because the opposite of that, or the below the line in this context, is closed, defensive, and committed to being right. And I think there's a lot of that on both sides of any political debate, any religious conversation. There's just a lot of sides to be had, and people feel the need sometimes to take one of those sides and fight against the other side. And while I have opinions, I have values, as I said earlier, and I have values and opinions that are being stepped on in some of these conversations. I just feel like the more important practice to put into the world is the practice of true dialogue, where we agree to suspend previous assumptions in order to learn from each other. I don't know how to undo that in my own understanding. I don't know why I would want to undo that. That feels right to me. Dialogue feels right to me. Building the skill of listening, having the opportunity to have these kinds of conversations with people, not just with the camera like I'm doing right now, but with people where I can adjust on the fly, I can think on my feet, I can improve through improvisation, which is what we have to do when we don't have a pre-recorded script or a pre-written set of talking points. If we can allow ourselves to practice what it means to be in the moment, to be present, to practice our listening skills, to practice our realignment of some of our values. Values, maybe that's not the best, because I think values are pretty set in most of us. But if we can adjust our understanding and not necessarily have to agree, but can hold space for differing opinions, that's a skill. I believe we can get better at it. So I've been in this space of, what do I say? What do I do? Do I challenge people? Do I question people? Am I curious about things? And I have a couple of friends who I rely on very heavily. Thank you. You know who you are, friends, to give me an alternative point of view than the one that comes naturally to me. So I will ask people I trust, please help me see this from your perspective. Because I, as someone who has said I'm going to do my best to stay in the middle, I need to know what causes people to have such charged emotions on either side of, especially the political debate right now. What is it that caused people to take a hard stand on the right or a hard stand on the left? And when I ask that of people who don't really know me well or think that I'm trying to catch them at something, they might say things like, well, what are you, dumb? How can you possibly think that? If I'm asking a question about an alternative side. I told you earlier, I think on this podcast, that I got canceled by someone who thought that I was being belligerent when I was really trying to ask questions to understand. And so my opinion doesn't really matter right now in this conversation, because my higher calling feels like it is to learn from whoever is on whichever side. And my opinions aside, I will have my opinions, I will have my values. So all of that to say that I've read a couple of things today that really struck me as important to put into this space. And I didn't ask permission to use this, so I'm not going to give this person's name, but it's someone I know. And he wrote something on his Facebook page about his own life, and it caused me to ponder what he had written, and that's kind of the impetus for this conversation I'm having with those of you who are listening. He said, I will not meet a chaotic, divisive, angry world with fear, anxiety, or outrage. So he made that declaration on his Facebook page, and I really loved the courage it took for him to say that. I will not meet a chaotic, divisive, angry world with fear, anxiety, or outrage. He said, I choose peace in the face of chaos. I choose sanity in the face of insanity. I choose to be loving when fear, anger, and hatred are running high. I choose compassion over combativeness. I choose to live my best life, not in reaction to the world's madness, but as a stand for what is possible despite it. And he said, I have one obligation, to live a life of possibility for myself and those around me. I don't need to add more weight to an already heavy world. I need to be the space where something lighter, something truer, something more life-giving can exist. And I'll give his initials, LM. And he is someone I've known for many years. And I don't know that I could have written it any better than that. LM. That's beautiful. I stand with you in that calling, that mission. I don't need to add more weight to an already heavy world. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have my opinions. It doesn't mean I think that things could be done differently. And I really do believe that things would be done differently if people would just learn to listen, would learn to use their voices in a way that brings us together, to learn from and with each other, and to recognize that while some behaviors seem to be just crazy and out there, there's something behind the behavior that caused a person to believe that was the right way to be. That's what got me in trouble earlier when I got canceled, because there was a person who couldn't take that, couldn't say that someone had a belief that was different from his that wasn't evil, because he believed that evil was running a person's behavior. I don't know that that's not true, but that's not where I'm coming from in this conversation. So I found another meme on social media that I thought fit in this conversation, and it says, paraphrasing spiritual teacher Ram Dass. I'm a fan of Ram Dass's. It says, whether this is the first day of the apocalypse or the first day of the golden age, the work remains the same: to love each other and ease as much suffering as possible. So if that's what I feel called to do, then it wouldn't make sense for me to throw gotcha bombs at people who think differently than I. It just wouldn't make sense. Whether or not I agree with what they're doing, whether or not I think what they're doing is right, I don't know. I don't even want to get into judgment conversation here, because it just doesn't feel right for me to do that. And so what I'm recognizing for myself is that in a chaotic environment, in a space of what feels like chaos, according to chaos theory, there are underlying patterns. And I remember hearing Deepak Chopra talk about this one time, and he was talking about being at a train station when everybody is trying to get to their train. And if you're standing above the train and you're watching what's going on, it can look really messy. But when you watch a little while, you're like, okay, these people know where they're going. The train stop number 2 is over here, 3 is over here. People are rushing through, but they know where they're going. And he said, if something came over the loudspeaker and said, track 2 has changed to track 4, all of a sudden you would have chaos thrown into that mix. And it would look terrible because people would be walking in one direction and they'd have to change direction and go to the other direction. And he said for a moment it would look very, very chaotic. But eventually you would notice that while people thought they were going over here, they now had to switch direction and go over here. And he said patterns would emerge in the midst of what looks like chaos. And so I believe in that. I believe in what Deepak says when he says great changes are preceded by great chaos. And I'm thinking about the destruction that's necessary for creativity to emerge. And if you think about painting, I've been doing a lot of painting in the last couple of years, and I have to destroy a blank canvas to put paint on it, to put color on the canvas. It's destroying the peace and serenity of the blank white canvas. So when you think about it that way, destruction is necessary for creativity to emerge. If you think of a piece of music, you have to destroy the silence in order to put the music into that space. So destruction is simply a way to break down something that might not have been working in order to allow something new to emerge. So as I'm thinking about all of this and that difference that I'm noticing in people who are doubling down on a position that they hold, a stand that they make, or a fight that they want to have against what they don't like. And I think about who people are becoming in the midst of this chaos and what it's doing to people's health and what it's doing to people's relationships and their families. And I just wonder if that is the chaos that we need for the underlying creativity to emerge? I don't know. I don't want to stand in judgment of any of this. And I think about that for myself as I've been doing my best so far to hold that space for wisdom to emerge from the chaos. Sometimes it feels like I'm not making a difference because people are just mad at me. People, not everybody, but there are people who have been mad at me and people who have called me names and have said I'm a communist, I'm a socialist, I'm a MAGA, I'm a whatever. I guess if you're standing in the middle, you're probably going to piss off both sides, right? Both far sides, because they will judge you as not taking their side. They will say, how can you possibly believe there could be goodness on that other side? I get it. I do understand it. I'm not denying that, but I'm also not saying it's easy. So I was having a conversation with a friend today, and I just said that. I said, sometimes it feels like I'm not making a difference. We were having this conversation on Messenger, so it wasn't an actual vocal conversation. But he wrote back, well, it's made a difference in me, he said. And as an example, our district has adopted my initiatives for engaging with independent voters and working on implementing that for about 80,000 households. So he's telling me that the conversations he and I have been having, political conversations back and forth, I'm asking for his position, which is different from mine, and he's giving me his, and he's told me before that I've helped him see things from less of a far reaches position and a little bit closer to more of a middle. He still has his position on one of the sides, but he's saying he's now actually having conversations with independent voters, which is different than he might have. So every now and then you might get a hint that something you're doing is making a difference. And I think if what I'm doing is hoping to make a difference so that I'll be appreciated and recognized, that has some ego in it, which, to be honest, I still have. I mean, we still have ego. My mentor, James, will say recognition and appreciation is what babies cry for and grown men die for. And so it's a human need we have to be appreciated and recognized. And so if we can find ways to do that in the midst of all of this chaos and all of this uncertainty of what the future will pull us into, I think that's going to help all of us get through this. We've survived every day of our lives up to now. I'm hopeful that we will continue to do that for many more years. And another platform I've been learning more about, Chris and I have been talking about spiral dynamics. And if we look at spiral dynamics as a way to observe human evolution, it's pretty interesting to take myself out of the midst of the chaos and do my best to observe from a different perspective what spiral dynamics would say about what's happening in the world. There's a lot more to spiral dynamics than I can tell about in a podcast here, but it's a way of looking at how humans develop. It's the 8-stage spiral of development, and it goes from instinctive survivalistic at the first stages all the way up to holistic, experiencing the wholeness of existence through mind and spirit. So if we can just be aware of where people might be in their own evolutionary journeys and give them some grace in that space, at least maybe there would be an opportunity to learn from each other. I'm not all that confident that people who are on the far reaches of any movement or any religion, politics, whatever it is that we're talking about, those people who are pretty dug in to their position, I'm not sure they're open to having a dialogue. It feels a little more like there are the people who call me the names and the bullies of anything who probably are threatened by someone asking questions. And again, that's just a theory I have. I can't prove that. But it seems that there are people who are threatened by someone who is curious and wants to know more. And I mean, you throw race into this, throw racial conversations, diversity conversations. I mean, any topic that we're not supposed to talk about, we have the potential for getting into a fight about. I've been told by my friends of color, not all of them, I've been told by some, I'm not your Google. Don't ask me about how your experience of white privilege would be to me as a person of color. And I'm thinking, well, how am I supposed to learn if I'm not taking a conversation from you, someone I respect and trust? And then I have other people, friends of color, who completely in a space of compassion and love will say, ask me. I'll tell you. I'll share with you my lived experience. And when we can do that with each other in a spirit of harmony, in a true dialogue, I think that's where we learn from and with each other. And I understand from, I have white privilege and I don't see because I'm swimming in the white sea. I would like to know more about that. One thing I learned from Chloe Valdary when she was talking about her program, I will put something in the link here. She was talking, or a link in the show notes. She was talking about love being the missing element in the racial divide between the people who are on one end white supremacists and on the other side oppressed people of color. And she said in the middle of this is love, and that's what's missing. And if we can see people through the eyes of love instead of the eyes of fear, we have possibilities of coming together. But if fear wins, if fear is all we know, there's really no space for love to come in, even though love is just waiting to be invited, waiting for, as Marianne Williamson would say, love will enter at the slightest invitation. The light will enter at the slightest invitation. And sometimes that's when your head cracks open. So in the midst of the chaos and the destruction and all of the things that have to happen for something new to be born, love is just waiting to be invited, waiting to shine. And maybe it's not even waiting to shine. It's never not been shining. It's never not been shining. You know, there's a Hafiz, I think it's Hafiz, I'll put this in the notes too. I didn't think about this, but it's that quote that says, even after all these years, the sun doesn't say to the earth, you owe me. It just continues shining. And look what a love like that can do. It lights up the whole earth. I mean, in that space of, we're just here to do good, to be good, to shine our light, to live in love. And we're not changing that when we see that as our mission, in spite of the chaos. Mark, we owe it to ourselves to love ourselves first. From that comes an ability to love unconditionally on others. Bravo, Mark French, my friend, who is off on his own sojourn, where he is visiting all 48 of the states. I think maybe 49, Mark, you might make it to Canada here, or Canada, through Canada up to Alaska. I'm not sure. So Mark, you're doing great work sharing his adventures and his photography. He has a calendar. If you'd like to purchase his calendar in support of his work, that's such a great reminder, Mark. We owe it to ourselves to love ourselves first. Because it's like the oxygen mask, right? You can't help others if you don't help yourself first. I think so many of us are so used to giving from our own buckets, our own cups, that we don't allow our cups to ever be full. We're giving to everybody else and we're existing in our own lives depleted. If we could learn to give only from our overflow, we would keep our cups full and full to overflowing, because there's so much goodness in the world and we could find it if we were really looking for that. And then give only from your overflow. And because you're doing such a good job of keeping your cup full to overflowing, that should be easy to give to other people. But give only from your overflow, not from your own supply. And that's something to just consider. And by the way, I could be completely wrong about everything I've said here. I could be completely wrong. And I say that because I'm open to learning. I'm open to learning. And the way I learn best is to have somebody share something with me that I can ponder, not hit me over the head with a brick. And I think so often in these charged conversations, that's what we think we need to do. I'm going to hit you over the head with a brick so that you will hear what I'm saying because you're not listening to me the way it is. So shut up and listen. And how does that work? Even if you have the most profound thing to say, my survival instinct will kick in and I cannot hear what you have to say if you are yelling at me. And I just know there's another way to do this. I know that in my bones. I know there's another way. I don't always know the better way, but I recognize that if what I'm doing currently isn't working to produce the result I want, there's got to be a different way. And the only way to better is through different. And if I'm not willing to change, then I'm really not committed to having a new awareness dawn on me. So that's what you can count on me for. You can count on me to continue to ask questions, even when it gets hard, even when it feels lonely, even when it feels like I'm the only one in the middle because everybody else is louder on the sides. I will continue to ask questions. I will continue to be a shelter in the storm. I will do my best to be a light in the chaos. I will be a place you can come when you need to just take a break. I will do my best to be a lighthouse, not a rescue boat. I will be the lighthouse whose light stands on shore and guides boats in, but I'm not going to rescue. Because I think what I've learned, probably the best lessons I've learned, are to be accountable. My personal accountability to what I truly desire does not include having somebody else tell me what to do. It just doesn't seem to work for me that way. I need to come to my realizations on my own. And so I will share with you what I've done in that space in a loving and caring way, in a light-giving way, but not in a this is the way kind of conversation. I would love it if we would come to that together, if we would find a way to connect, communicate, and maybe even at some point collaborate on something, because together, I think, together everyone achieves more. That's an acronym for team that I love. But not if it doesn't feel congruent, not if it doesn't feel like it's moving up on the spiral dynamics spiral. I'm doing my best to continue my evolutionary journey up toward the second tier being value memes of the spiral dynamics model. And I don't know how to stop that. I don't want to stop that. If you want to have those kinds of conversations that maybe will pull us all in a new direction, but not bring us back to gravity's pull. Future pull is pulling me up. Gravity pulls me down. And I'm way interested in the future pull. So let's continue this conversation. If you're interested at all, please share the podcast. We're in season 5, coming up on season 6. This will be episode number 254 maybe. We have a lot of things that we can talk about, things that we can create dialogue about, things that will help us be better in all aspects of our lives, parenting, our work, our community involvement, anything. Pick a space. And I'm committed to helping clients, coaching clients, audiences when I do speaking, people who read my books. I'm committed to giving more to ponder and more to wonder about, and then hopefully have a conversation and a dialogue about. So as always, everybody, do what you can this week to get real, radical, energized, authentic, and learning focused. And find somebody with whom you can have a true dialogue. Somebody who maybe doesn't think exactly the way you do. Maybe there's someone out there who is looking for you. What you seek is seeking you. And I think if you just look, you'll see it's there. And it might show up in the most unexpected ways. Let's be open to that possibility. Thanks, everybody. Bye.